If you had any doubts that Jordan Peele is one of the best mainstream screenwriters and directors in cinema right now, 2019's Us should erase these altogether. After the impeccable Get Out, which soon became one of my favorite films of all time and certainly one of my favorite screenplays, I was left wondering how in the world Peele would raise the bar even higher with his second film, and silently, I feared he'd be unable to do so. Thankfully, I was very wrong. Us is a beautifully crafted comedy horror experience laden with imagery and with all the deeper, more meaningful undertones of social commentary that we have come to expect from Peele's movies. However, it's also confusing as hell. In this video, we'll peel back the many layers of the film and its apocalyptic America as we try to explain why it's a masterpiece. Naturally, this video contains spoilers for Us, so if you still haven't watched it, do yourself a favor and come back when you're done. In Us, as in any of Peele's movies, there's a great deal of imagery and symbolism that helps to convey the deeper undertones of social criticism while still leaving a superficially enjoyable slasher comedy. This time around, the core message of Us isn't as self-evident and in your face as the premise of his first film, Get Out, and it's instead left quite open to the audience's interpretation. We could argue about the core message of this film forever and we still wouldn't settle on a singular explanation. The movie could be commenting on a self-destructing America, arguing that its downfall will reside in the parts of society and of ourselves which we have decided to forget and bury underground, i.e. America's bloody history left in the shadows for the benefit of fake progress. In this reading, the tethered are literally the versions of ourselves, which store all the hatred and violence that we decided to do without, coming to remind us that unless we truly face the ghosts of our past, the ghosts and the hatred will resurface. In this case, the hands across America could be a metaphor for how this would result in the country being divided again into two halves, except this time in a literal and bloodier way. But then again, the film could as easily be about an experiment gone wrong and resulting in a bunch of people dying at the hands of their doppelgangers in butcher cosplays. But to me, Us is dealing with a completely different issue which somewhat aligns with the social commentary we come to expect from Jordan. In my eyes, this is a story about class divisions and particularly about the dynamics of a society divided by wealth. And here's why. One of the central themes or concepts explored by Peele is the idea of duality. Images which can be considered reflections of each other are all over this movie. Mirrors? Check. Twins? Check. Bloodthirsty cultish underground psychopath clones? Also check. There is most definitely a focus on this idea of the two sides of America. In fact, Peele is so desperate to make this point that he literally divides his fictional world into two levels, the surface and the underground, with the surface people literally controlling the tethered below, like puppet masters, hence the string imagery and the untethering. The dichotomy here is pretty self-evident. The people on the surface live pleasant lives, enjoying the comforts of modern society, whereas their doppelgangers below live in crowded, underground corridors, incapable of free will and forced to live a sort of budget version of the life of their clones above. In other words, the rich control the poor. It appears that Peele literally created a social pyramid in the film, except he seems to argue that there's just two levels in the social structure. You're either a part of the higher levels in the pyramid, i.e. the surface people, and you enjoy life and thrive off of capitalism, or you're a victim of that same system, a surplus, ignored and forgotten by those above you, but at their will. And I can kind of see where Peele is coming from with this argument. If you really think about it, people at an economic disadvantage, the homeless, beggars, etc., have no political power. And at the same time, they're at the mercy of the wealthy. For example, they depend on their empathy to gain money through begging. They cannot change the laws, but they are shoved one way and the other by those who do. In other words, they are puppets to the rich man, unable to climb up the social ladder because in Peele's America, there's no such thing as a social ladder. It is easy to see the film as a commentary on the US. The title of the goddamn movie is literally a play on words. It could be read as us, the pronoun, or as US, the country. In both cases, since Jordan is American, he is asking his viewers to reflect upon themselves, their society. Color imagery also plays a big role in making the case for this theory. The narrative confronts the red, or tethered, against the white wealthy America, already ticking the boxes for two of the colors in the American flag. It is also no surprise that the black family is the only one to survive the attack, strangers to the country's middle class and fresh from surfacing the country's citizenship themselves. References to the two Americas are everywhere, but my favorite example is the use of music in the scene where Adelaide's family breaks into the rich white family's house. Before, when the tethered kill the house owners, Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys is playing in the house. And yet when the black family breaks in and kills the tethered, it's NWA's Fuck the Police. Both of these bands were California natives, but they represent two completely different Californias. It is this idea of the environment shaping people that lies at the equator of Peele's film. There's also a heavy use of religious imagery in the film, surprisingly enough. Particularly, there's this repetition of a verse from the Old Testament, Jeremiah 11:11. This is clever in every way possible. For one, the verse itself is a mirror. 11:11 is a palindrome, again linking back to that idea of doubling that he insists upon for this film. But then the contents of said verse are also relevant. The verse alludes to God's punishment of the Jews for worshipping false idols and includes a piece of dialogue supposedly uttered by God himself, which reads, "I will bring on them a disaster they cannot escape. Although they cry out to me, I will not listen to them." This, of course, serves as foreshadowing for the events of the film. Other symbols like the rabbit are a bit more ambiguous. For one, Peele seems to have a phobia towards rabbits for some reason.
You know what? Rabbits, they're supposed to be cute. On paper, they're adorable, lovable animals. Have you ever gotten close to a rabbit?
And that probably is part of the reason why he decided to include them in the film. Sort of like an omen associated to the tethered. It could also be linked to Alice in Wonderland and the idea of going down the rabbit hole, also reminiscent of the underground tunnels in the film. But whether it's intentional or otherwise, it turns out that following our religious train of thought, the rabbits might have an accidentally deeper meaning. In Judaism, due to the representation in the Old Testament, rabbits are considered an unclean animal, often associated with lust and sexuality, both taboo even in modern society. It makes sense that the tethered are associated to this animal. In fact, it is said that they thrive on it, because they themselves are taboo. They are ignored, forgotten by their counterparts, and therefore there is something accidentally genius about that association. Jordan's criticism of capitalism in its current form is most evident in his use of the Hands Across America as a motif. Hands Across America was a real fundraiser event that took place on May 25, 1986, with the idea, as explained through the TV ad in the film, being that millions of Americans would hold hands and form a human chain that would go from the east coast of the country to the west coast. In turn, each person would donate $10 in solidarity to the homeless and other American minorities. This came at a time when these types of fundraisers were actually quite commonplace, and they were huge cultural events promoted by these big companies and artists like Coca-Cola or Prince. What Peele is seeming to argue here, however, is that these efforts go a very small way in achieving their original goals. He criticizes America's complacency, capable of forgetting about these problems and about how they exist, simply because they donate a small amount of money in a one-time thing. Even for the big sponsors like Coca-Cola, what they donate to the cause is quite laughable compared to their annual profits. Jordan then reimagines the event and subverts it, turning it into a call for revolution for the tethered and a much more violent effort in his world. He contemplates what real change would look like, with the poor superseding the rich through murder. Peele seems to make the case that anyone can make it given the opportunity, to then remind us that not everyone is fortunate enough to have one. The Reds are what they are because of their environment. They don't know how to speak because no one has taught them. They don't know basic manners because they didn't need them, etc. etc. He criticizes capitalism for setting back some while giving others an unfair head start, subverting the American dream and dismantling the rags to riches narrative. When given an opportunity, the tethered do succeed. They manage to hold hands across the country, unlike their counterparts. And of course, there's that beautiful twist at the end. The ending of this film is brutal. Not because there's another stabbing or because someone gets killed or anything like that, but because it reminds us that the movie's antagonists, who we've come to loathe at this point of the movie, could have easily been ourselves. They could have been us. And in a sense, they are us. By revealing that Adelaide was actually Red and Red was Adelaide all this time, not only is the plot marvelously tied together, as how would this whole chain of events be set in motion if not through this swap, but the crucial social criticism is delivered, and with force at that. This is the ultimate proof that Peele believes our environment is at the center of who we are. It determines whether we are killers or peaceful middle-class citizens. Red grew up to be a normal being, whereas Adelaide grew up to be a bloodthirsty cult leader just because of an unexpected turn of events. Actually, Peele's genius shines through here, as he had Adelaide's or Red's shirt become bloodier and bloodier along the course of the film, turning from white to red towards the end, a symbol of her true nature, but also a proof of concept. Anyone who grows in an environment of violence will be forced to become violent, because at the end of the day, we're all at the mercy of luck, and wherever we find ourselves at the beginning of the game will dictate where we finish. Unless, of course, we change that ourselves. So, there you have it. As usual, I do hope you've learned something, or at least that listening to me gushing over this film has been entertaining for you. If you haven't watched Jordan Peele's other film, Get Out, I do hope I have intrigued you enough to get you to give it a go. Trust me, you will not regret it. In any case, thank you for coming back this week. Remember to like, comment, and share the video. It literally takes less than a second, and it really does help a lot. Also, on screen you have other videos that I think you might like. But yeah, anyway, that's all for today, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.